NZ Aerosports, Icarus Canopies, now Gyro. That's right, we've rebranded, and Gyro is our next generation. It honours our founder, as that's the name we knew him by, but Gyro also marks the start of a new chapter. And not to be biased, but it's going to be fucking epic. Long story short, we're more us than ever, so if you're new to the sport, or even a Sky God Ninja Turtle, welcome. I think our valiant leader Lucy, Gyro's daughter, says it best.
And we still got that fuck yeah attitude. Rebrand! Woo!
Rebrand woo indeed, Lucy. Anyway, head over to gyro.com for more info and get amongst you legends.
I was 19, broke, unemployed, and sold my girlfriend's canopy for drug money. So I thought I better sew her a new one. What a sentence, and what a story. This describes the humble yet outrageous beginnings of NZ Aerosports, the home of Icarus Canopies, in the words of our founder himself. From getting a paratrooper toy from his mom, watching parachutes at the DZ as a 6-year-old, jumping off the wharf with a parachute made from bed sheets, doing his first jump at 16, sewing his first canopy on a borrowed machine at 19, and starting to sell parachutes out of a garage in 1986, Paul Gyro Martin had an undying love for the sky. Our company started with one man with the wildest of spirits and a true blue sky dream, a renegade. In the time that Gyro created and ran the Icarus Canopies brand until he passed away in 2017, he pushed everything he had to its limits. We miss him, and we always will. Gyro is the next generation of NZ Aerosports. It honors our founder, of course, because it was the name we all knew him by, but Gyro the rebrand also marks the start of a new chapter, our next jump. Gyro is the space between sound and silence, art and science, chaos and calm. Gyro is a state of epic tranquility that transcends understanding. That moment, in the door, in free fall, mid-swoop, where nothing but the present exists. A perfect balance of euphoria and thrill. Gyro captures our passion for flying and our commitment to designing break-the-fucking-rules canopies that deliver pilots pure, wild flight. Hey gang, so I got a new book out. It's called The Upside of Fear, and it's exactly what you think it's about. It's about the good side of, well, getting scared. In it, we talk not only about the science and biology behind fear, but the psychology as well. And it's not just coming from me, it's coming from some of the best in the sport. Omar Alhijalan, Jeff Provenzano, Maxine Tate, and so many more have contributed their sometimes terrifying stories to the book to help you overcome your fear. So head to the lunaticfringepodcast.com. You're going to find the link to the book there, as well as the other books. It's available in ebook, paperback, hardback, and audiobook right now.
Coming straight from the cockpit, it's another episode of Lunatic Fringe with the fucking pilot.
Ready, set, go! Back in the can for another edition of the Lunatic Fringe podcast, and this time we're going to keep it a little bit more on the professional side. We've got Chloe from Alta, who is back to talk to us about about a whole bunch of different stuff, but specifically how psychotherapy can help out in our sport. So first off, how are you?
I'm good. Super busy. We're actually getting ready for Invasion. We'll be there all week as a vendor, just like last year. We are also so stoked to announce our collaboration with Andy Sparato. I've been trying to say his name, so I think the only way to do it is with an accent, because I love it. Sparato from Option Gravity. Andy is awesome. He was really instrumental in also teaching me a little bit about the garment industry and like how complex it is, and giving his feedback of what he's learned, owning Option Gravity. So Really excited to be releasing these shirts. The graphic art was done by the very talented Dope Leah Levy. Very grateful for her. She was so patient in helping us create the Alta Therapy first limited edition Sky shirts. I'm stoked. I'm totally stoked. There's only 30 of these shirts. 15 pieces are men's cut and 15 pieces are women's cut. And 100% of the proceeds go straight to the piggy bank for Alta Therapy's critical injury program. What that means is every single penny and dime that I collect from selling any garment from that's Alta Therapy related goes to providing free psychotherapy sessions for anyone who has been critically injured or is coming out of the hospital or still in the hospital. The idea is that I'm supporting people who are in the hospital, and they're either in like a jurisdiction away from their therapist, they're outside of state. That happens quite the bit, actually. They'll just be injured in a different place, so they can't relocate back home, and their therapists are just like, hey, we can't. Alta Therapy is able to do so on the basis that we are also providing sports-related mental coaching, and therefore they're able to actually just chat with me. And since I'm a licensed clinical social worker, I have the skills, but we are talking a lot about things that are sports related and medical related. So, that's why we can kind of jump in and help out if anybody actually needs. So the idea is that eventually we'll have more of these garments, right? Like hats, hoodies. I'm trying to go for more like daily wearables.
Sure.
So I'm really excited about that.
I mean, well, I know you've been busy as hell because it's always tough to schedule a sit down because I know you're working quite a bit. But specifically talking about what we touched on last time and moving forward, can you give us a bit of a recap on what Alta actually does so that people kind of have a ballpark idea of what we're talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. For those of you who don't know what that is in terms of the critical injury program, it is a virtual psychotherapy medical advocacy program for skydivers and base jumpers that have been severely injured and they're still in the hospital without mental health support. There's also a virtual virtual program that we have that is just general psychotherapy. Eventually, so if I were to connect everything, I would say that our critical injury program, it basically allows for virtual sessions until discharge. And then jumpers have an option to become active clients of Alta's general psychotherapy program upon discharge and reintegration of life, right? Hopefully reintegration of sport as well. So there's 4 programs in our clinic. There, as I just mentioned, those 2, right? Critical injury, general psychotherapy. We also have competitive coaching, so sports psychology that is specifically tailored for the extreme sports population. We're definitely going to talk a lot more about that later on today, and why there is a difference between traditional sports psychology methods and what we should be using, or what I think we should be using in our sports for performance and competitions. And then there's also this other part of my work that is tailored towards skydive coaching, and that can also be applied for people that are coming back from critical injury. They're coming back from maternity leave, they're coming back from a long hiatus, or students that are specifically dealing with anxiety and they have a lot of behaviors that, instructors really just can't catch on the fly, and they don't have the tools quick enough to kind of delve very specifically into the assistance that a person's going to need to mitigate those anxiety, thoughts, behaviors, emotions, quick enough to be able to get them to perform well, right? Because we're seeing a lot of students, they kind of like, they can blank out, they make a lot of jokes, there's a lot of like energy spillover, and I can just kind of go in there and address that very quickly and give them tools. So I don't really say that I'm a skydiving coach for everybody, but specifically for Alta, I became a coach so that I can help people where they really need it.
So, I mean, basically you're offering help, for the whole gambit, from anything from the student that's just overwhelmed and trying to get through everything, all the way up to someone that's a high level pro competing, or especially as we started talking about people coming back from severe injury.
Exactly, exactly. That's why we have four different programs. It's exactly what you said. So it's from the very beginning of the skydiving career all the way up until something may or can happen that takes us away from the sport, and also everything in between, right? So we have these kind of cusps of like I'm becoming a competitor to I am a intermediate level competitor to I'm a world-class competitor, and the differences in terms of cohorts are very specific and they're tailored to individual needs. So I try to create a space where all different walks of life in skydiving base or just the extreme sports community can come in, and there's something there for them.
Sure. Well, I mean, you guys were even featured in Sports Illustrated, weren't you?
Yeah, that actually ties into what we were just talking about in terms of the skydive coaching. Like I was just saying, the way that I use the rating isn't just in general to coach just everybody. It's the way that I use this rating. I call it the mental gear checks program. I actually have a more structured way of just adding to the like categories G and H and like anything that you're basically talking about with younger students. I'll add to that when it comes to younger jumpers. But the way that I specifically use my coach rating for people that are not just students is that I use extra emphasis on the emotional and mental aspect, right? So the point is to understand exactly what's going on in someone's head and then provide tailored tools to help them feel good in the sky after an accident, after I said, like, what did I pregnancy, divorce, loss of a loved one, anything where there's a major transition that kind of rocks our world or changes fundamentally the way that we approach the sky, or even changes the way that we temporarily approach the sky and we don't even realize these things sometimes. So I'm here in Sebastian if anyone needs that. But Maria Aldrich was the one who interviewed me for Sports Illustrated. I was pretty proud of that. I was at Parachute Industries Association earlier this year, and George Hargis of the USPA, she came up to me. We had a conversation, and just so generously wanted to help feature Alta and what we're doing. So this is like a reinvented way of approaching skydive coaching, where it's not just about skydiving, but it is very specific to individual needs, where I spend a little bit of time getting to know the person first and then figuring out what like either mental health or sports performance and mindset looks like as it's applied to skydive skills.
Sure. And for that kind of thing, you're aiming more towards the younger jumpers in the sport, right? The ones that are up and coming and still trying to get a grip on exactly what the hell they've gotten into.
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, look, if it's not a seasoned jumper that has been through an accident or has a longer hiatus or has gone through something difficult, I mean, the best students for me are the anxious and eager ones. Anxious because they're the ones who are going to mask a lot of their feelings and they won't actually ask for help. They won't really telegraph a lot of it other than just anxiety, coming across as like, yes, 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 I got it. And they'll have like this glossed over look. Instructors, absolutely. I think if you're a good instructor, you know to look for that glossed over look to understand if someone is lost without telling you. But very seldomly will an instructor sit there, pause for a moment because they might not even have the time, and ask like, where is this coming from, right? Because I have psychotherapy as a background, and that is the skill set that I come to, like not exactly an instructor, right? I'm able to ask very specific questions that are probing enough to get someone to open up, and then from there we really do address like where this is coming from. rather quickly. But if you think about it like a surgeon who's going to go specifically for a certain nerve, it doesn't really feel as scary. It doesn't feel painful for the person. It doesn't feel exposing. It actually feels relieving. And that's who I want to work with. Someone who has a lot of difficulty in their mind because it's super loud and they need the help with someone who's going to ask the right questions to get them to feel like, oh man, I can keep that. I can actually put that mask down and be like, yeah, I do feel bad about myself here. Or yes, this is touching on some points in terms of my identity or whatever. And I'll help them, by incorporating some of the jargon that organizes some of this dialogue, right? But the idea is to get them to feel confident, but not just performatively, on a much more deep level where they really do feel confident and they know why and they know what it's tied to. And I can do that pretty fast. The eager ones, those are the ones that, like these are the people that would want to downsize really quickly. They're going to want to, they're the ones who come in for AFF and they already know that they want a wingsuit. They already know that they want to swoop. They already know that they want to do all these things because they've seen it a couple of times and they are inspired by a lot of the more seasoned jumpers. And while that's a beautiful thing, they don't really connect consequences. And that's where you get like your ADHD clients. That's where you get maybe even your people who are depressed or the people who are angry, right? And so I would want to work with the people that are a little bit more on the complex side of human experience and human presentation because I can get in there real quick and like have very serious direct conversations that are pretty relieving for other people for those people. Um, and like I said before, that really is the reason why I got the rating in the first place. I mean, I want to help mitigate like all of the jumpers that fall into those cracks that we kind of miss, and then we're like, oh, well, we're just gonna put them on some list, and yeah, that guy's gonna go in, and it's like that's not acceptable for
Sure.
me by any means, and we normalize that a lot. So, I'll do the hard work. I'll take those referrals from people if they have them.
And I mean, that is the hard work, right? Because we've all seen it. Anybody that's been in the sport any length of time can see the problematic students coming through or the problematic low time jumpers that would probably be perfect for needing exactly that kind of coaching.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's hard for me when it's live, it's happening, and I can't nor should have to articulate exactly in the moment what I'm thinking about in my mind. Like algorithmically, I'm thinking like, okay, well, this is something that can be talked about and this is the way that I would approach it, et cetera. Because if I'm on the drop zone and it happens all the time where someone has something to say about a jumper that makes them feel worried, right? And to ask, the best that I can do is just say like, hey, if you're so worried, make a referral, like refer them to Alta, right? But I don't go to the drop zone to specifically be a therapist, and I
Sure.
don't show up as someone who has like a lot to say on a soapbox. What I do is I show up, I wingsuit, I spend time with my friends, etc. But there's times internally that I just feel like I don't know how to get you to buy into the idea that you can make these referrals if you really feel worried, and this is why, right? Instead, I'm just like, hey, make the referral if you're so worried, right?
Sure.
Rather than just like leaving it there as a comment.
Sure. Sure. No, I completely get it, and I think that's a good way to go about it because this is something that you don't want to come off as though you're shoving something down anybody's throat. That's the
Yeah.
great way to get people to run away screaming in a heartbeat as if they think something's being forced on them. So I think that's a great way to do it.
Yeah, and I think it's an exercise of my own boundaries, right? I mean, like if I show up to a drop zone, it's because I'm there to jump primarily, or I'm working with a client. But at the same time, it most of the times I'm there to jump, So
Sure.
it's a lot of different things that I try to juggle, and I try to juggle effectively because the work can be a little finicky sometimes. But
Sure.
yeah,
So
you know,
for anybody that didn't catch the first episode that we did, can you bring us up to speed on because we kind of glossed over everything in that first episode. Just give us a brief recap of what we covered on that and where we go from here.
yeah, yeah. Um, We broke down the limitations of traditional sports psychology methods. And we broke them down because we have to look at them for extreme sports in a very specific lens because we ride that margin of error means fatality, error means injury. So it's not the same as tennis, right? I always like to say, like, this isn't tennis. We're not playing tennis. And the biggest being the emphasis of results without specific considerations around neurology and mental health, which I think obviously, as why we're here, it's critical to our specific community.
Sure.
So we also looked at the traditional model in terms of how it's applied in AFF and IAD programs. So the traditional model is basically this linear model that it's like, I'm going to teach you this thing. You're going to learn the behavior, you're going to learn the movement, and then you're going to show me what the movement looks like as I taught it to you. You're then going to practice and you're going to continue that same exact movement. And then that means that you've learned, right? So those performance reviews and performance tests that we do, levels 1 through 8 in AFF, for example, right? You cannot just take that information. Obviously, we all know as seasoned jumpers, you can't take that information and then apply it to absolutely every kind of situation that can happen. Sometimes you need to apply that plus other things, right? So the more that you get into skydiving and skills-based, focused goals, right? The more you're going to have to be dynamic. And so the dynamic theory in sports psychology is much more suitable for this, but at the same time, like you need to take the dynamicism plus this mindset because you can get hurt or you can die, right? So like the mindset part is something that we still don't focus on as much as the movement, the dynamicism, the integration, the what's a word for it? Like the intuition that kind of comes with like time and getting coaching and then applying it and then, flying with really good jumpers and eventually that's who you jump with, right? And kind of growing in that. Like it's not just how dynamic you can be in the sport, it's how dynamic you can be in the mind.
Sure. Well, I mean, I had one particular student, which I think I even talked about it with you, was couldn't get past an AFF level because he couldn't stop his turns. And so I rewired the entire thing by taking him on a jump that had nothing to do with the syllabus. And it was just about having fun. And I just kind of short-circuited his brain a little bit and showed him that he could do something he didn't think he could do by stepping sideways instead of forwards or backwards. And for me, it was a dynamic enough move that I took him away from where he was stuck and kind of rerouted him around it. And then he found his way through it. So at least for me,
Right.
that's how I put stuff like that to use.
Right, right, right. And that's at the student level, which I think is so imperative, right? I mean, like we have to have those somewhat fun jumps with students just to get them to see, like, listen, not everything is about, step A is step 1, step 2, step 3, and this is what I have to do. But it's also like feeling your body being in the moment, being present.
Sure.
And that's on the student level. Now, the majority of our population in this sport is, I mean, actually, I don't know those numbers. I don't know if I'm going to say something that's incorrect here, but the point that I'm trying to make, and I think anyone who's listening is going to understand that why I'm tripping up. But what I'm trying to say is, the big meat of our population are the people who are seasoned, right? You have like if you have two bookends where you have the students and then you have like the elite performers, right? World renowned people, and then you have everybody in between,
Yeah.
right? So that broken down to different levels of intermediate levels of understanding, different levels of.
Well, I would think, let me just step in for a second. I would think that, I mean, with this, you're, because the students are, it's about trying to get them to learn while confronting the fact that they might die doing what they're learning. But with that bulk of people, you've taken learning how to, open your parachute and fly and land it is now, if not second nature, it's at least getting there, which means that you can dive into much deeper problems instead of just on the surface. This is how you don't fucking die, right? Am
Yeah,
I getting
yeah,
that right?
exactly. Yeah, you are. Yeah, you are. So for those of us who are there, we're either starting competitions, we're starting to, do more and more camps, we're doing more and more coaching. Um, there's this really special opportunity to become so refined in what we do in terms of our body and also our minds that that's where I think you have to ask yourself how committed you are to the sport, right? Some people are just hobbyists, and that's okay, right?
Sure.
But if you are going to take it to the next level where you are going to apply your skills, you have to ask, what are my skills? And if you are taking your skills that are just skydiving, base, or piloting related, right? And you're just showing up to do it that way, then there's this entire other arena of, I guess, like inquiry or interrogation
Mm.
that you're missing, right? There's this missing piece, and it's important for performance. It's important for this natural ability to be so finely tuned into what you're not just feeling in terms of your wing or in terms of your body, but also in terms of like your emotional state, your cognitions, so that you can switch it and you can hear it in a moment and then you can switch it. You're aware. But it does take consistency. It takes integrating like these tools in conjunction with your fly site data, in conjunction with all of the other tools that you have for metrics in sport. So
Mm.
when I'm talking about wingsuiting, for example, I'll give a pretty like a I need a break.
Sure.
Yeah. So when we're talking for a wingsuit,
So, how about some personal examples? Like, how are you putting this stuff to use for yourself, especially since you're a more seasoned jumper?
yeah, yeah. So, I mean, you have to practice what you preach, right? So, I enjoy and I have a buy-in for the commitment, the consistency, and the integration to make myself more adaptable, right? Like, I already show up to the drop zone wanting to do extra work than just jump. So, I want to be really clear about the way that this is going to work is you have to have a buy-in for it to be part of your repertoire, right? So for me, I would say this. I would not consider myself a highly proficient intermediate wingsuit flyer, right? I would consider myself someone who has just entered the space of being able to fly an intermediate wingsuit and then possibly be able to be coached in said wingsuit. But instead, just because I got into that wingsuit and I have that wingsuit and I've, you know, been able to show myself that I can do it, right? What we both decided, me and my coach, right, was that I was going to go back down into, instead of from the ATC, go to the Swift and then be able to really home in on exact skills in wingsuiting. And where I added my own touch is to really be able to integrate my mind and body connection, where I'm thinking about my emotions, I'm thinking about the cognitions, like the thoughts that I'm having. I am able to do a body scan. I'm able to take inventory of everything that's happening in my mind and body, and then really and be able to change it in real time.
Mm.
So the example is, let's see, I'll give you what happened this weekend. So put on the Swift, I get on a load, and what I did instead of, let's say I'm working on a dive to flares and I'm working on we'll just keep, for simplicity's sake, dive to flare, right? So I know that I'm going to fly in a neutral position. I'm then going to increase the pressure from on my three rings from my shoulders. So I'm going to roll them forward. I know that I'm going to tilt my head down. I'm going to look down a little bit. I have to relax my body. I then have to go with the decreasing of altitude, right? So I'm going to change my angle of attack, and I'm going to have to feel that out so I don't cork out. And I know that all of this has to do with me being centered, grounded, listening, feeling. But there's also this part of me that will intercept the the parts where I'm trying to like integrate like learning and feeling it out physically with my cognitions. It'll be, whoa, 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 I'm gonna cork out before I even get to that point, right? So I have to know myself. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody's going to have the same experience, and that's why they should, reach out to Alta, or that's why they should do this work. It's that everybody's going to have their own mental hangups, and it's going to be very personal. For me, this is what happens. It's that because I am risk averse, I will preemptively think about all of the different things that can happen. And of course, these are anxious thoughts, and I'm very well aware of them, which is why I'm, doing this work. I'm addressing the anxiety as it pertains to me. But preemptively, I'm going to say, oh, well, if I'm going to, increase the pressure and I'm going to, change the angle of attack on my wingsuit, I am then going to cork out. Well, that's not necessarily true. So I have to find a way to, in real time, reframe the thought by reframe the behavior by reframing the thought, and therefore start building consistency of new information that, hey, I don't actually cork out. And I know I don't cork out, or I know that I won't cork out because of everything that I can do in real time with my mental state. Right. So what I was able to do was I gave myself full permission to do one dive to flare. That's it. Just do one. And the rest, what I actually did was that I went into a neutral position and I flew in airspace that I knew nobody would be in. And I looked at the horizon. Now I jump out of Skydive Sebastian. So for anyone who's actually, had the opportunity to jump there, it's beautiful. And it was a sunset jump. It was absolutely gorgeous. Right. So I'm looking to the left, I'm looking to the right, and I can see, and I'm trying to visualize. I give myself 3 exact seconds. So that's the only thing I'm responsible for counting for, because I don't want to get lost in the sauce. Right. I don't want to go and be in a flow state while I'm trying something new. That is really, really important. That's what a lot of people try to do. They want to feel the flow state and everything. Well, you actually want to be in clutch. What that means is that you want to have controllability, awareness, and be grounded. So you're the one who's making actionable choices in real time. You're using your judgment over just choreography or over just the kinesthetic abilities. We're going to get to that in just a moment, so I'll define that for you. But you want to get over just that, and you want to be in control while enjoying the ride and not being on its ride, if that makes any sense.
It makes complete sense.
So,
Absolutely. Now, you just mentioned
yeah.
something that a term that
Yeah.
I've heard before, and I'd love some clarification because we've talked about it before the podcast as well. The kinesthetic state and the other states. If you could go into depth on those, that'd be great.
Before I do that, I want to finish this thought, and
Sure.
let's go into that. Let's go into that in just a moment. But so this is what I did. So I gave myself 3 seconds to zone out. That is a conscious decision that I've given myself permission to do. That's not the same as, and it's measured, right? So it's not the same as saying, I'm just going to zone out and I'm just going to be here, right? Because you don't want to dissociate, and you don't want to kind of like pull yourself away from what you're actually doing to just feel.
Right.
But I gave myself 3 exact seconds, and I sang those 3 seconds. So I said like 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. But simultaneously, what I did in my head while I said it that way, I also was trying to find Miami. And then I looked to the left and I was trying to find Orlando. And I was trying to pay attention to the color gradients that the sun was, sort of like shining in blues and purples and reds and all of these beautiful, beautiful colors. And I got to enjoy the ride. Now, what did that do? That I'm not at the level anymore where I'm addressing just anxiety, right? That would be your student. I'm at the level where what I want to do is become so intuitive with my flying that I have to do two things. One is that I have to pay attention to the skills that I know, right? So the pressure from my feet, the rotation of my feet, the pressure of my wrists versus my shoulders, the what I can do with my abdominal muscles, like what I can do with my body positioning, my legs being bent or not, like my head, everything. So I'm trying to incorporate that, but I'm also now at the place where while those are hard skills, I am trying to get myself to feel my own body making small adjustments that are intuitive with myself. But how do you do that if you are just trying to do the thing that your coach told you to do? Right. So I needed something to simultaneously put myself in a position where I was in a relaxed state, but yet a focused one. And this requires multitasking in real time. So you're giving yourself a metric. Well, I gave myself a metric, right? 3 seconds, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, find Miami, turn, and all of that while feeling the small movements that I'm consciously choosing to do and what that means for the tiny micro adjustments that I'm making in real time and clocking that, saying what I've noticed while keeping track of where I'm at and keeping myself calm, but also keeping myself feeling gratitude, happiness, enjoyment, fulfillment at the same time of being like fucking focused, right? So you have to do a lot of things at once, but then what that does is that over time, you are now becoming more and more adaptable to multitasking with a not I want to say reasonable, but with an amount of work that I think is adequate for this kind of progression, right? Because like that's why I went to the Swift, right? I couldn't do that in the ATC because the ATC is like, okay, fly straight, don't fucking cork out, don't spin, open, and don't, get a concussion on your opening because you suck at openings, right? Like, I don't want to survive the ATC. I want to be super, super great with the Swift. And there's a reason. And I don't necessarily just want to fly the ATC straight and then open and say, ha, I survived it. That's good.
Sure.
Right. Because I won't be able to actually get to the place where with the ATC, I can look at the horizon and I can be like, wow, that's great and everything. But I will be able to. And rather, I'm hoping, and this is the other thing, I'm not going to give myself like a rigid schedule, but it would be nice in somewhat of the first quarter of 2026 that I can actually take what I have refined in one wingsuit and then apply it to the ATC.
Sure. Absolutely. Well, that makes complete sense. And
Mhm.
having that little break while you're learning, while it's actively happening, and be able to step back for a moment and relieve that pressure, so to speak, is huge.
Yeah. 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 It's really doing multiple things in one moment and knowing what you're doing, why you're doing them, and being able to log them. And as you also continue with this repertoire in your jumps, you are then taking inventory of how many times you've done that
Mm,
and what has worked, and then going back and logging that. And then that's how confidence is built, actual confidence. I've spoken
nice.
about actual confidence versus felt confidence. Like, some people force themselves into acting confident, right? Because they feel like they should be confident, or they feel like they want to be confident, or they like the concept of confidence, right? But actual confidence, true, measured proof, anecdotal evidence that you can do it is, I mean, it again, commitment, consistency, integration, work.
Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Hmm.
Now let's move on
Yeah.
to the kinesthesia and the other topics that we had talked briefly about, but that I'm not quite grasping. I'd like a little clarification.
Yeah, yeah. I'm going to move us from proprioception to kinesthesia and then the mind body awareness. We're going to briefly kind of talk about these things. I'm just going to sort of uh, give like this textbook kind of way of thinking about it. And then what I would like to do is integrate those three words and how they can be used, how the more appropriate words can be used in dynamic systems theory,
Okay.
which we already covered as nonlinearity and adaptation. And then the meat of why we're even here is the personal scorecard. So this is something that is a sports psychology term. It's a sports psychology tool, but at Alta, we've taken it, we've sort of revamped it so that it can work very, very specifically with what we do. So let me get into proprioception.
Awesome.
So proprioception, it refers to the body's ability to sense its position in space and the relative position of its parts. So for example, Dean, if I have you stand up, which we're both sitting down, but let's just say I have you standing up, and then I'm going to have you close your eyes and I'm going to ask you to touch your nose, right? You provided that there is no there's no TBI, there's no perceptual, challenges. There's nothing that would distort where you believe your nose is. You should be able to touch your nose with your eyes closed, right?
Sure.
Yeah, that's like AFF. So basically, it's like very, very specific. You can locate things and you know where they are, right? So that's what I mean by like it's not enough to kind of get us to being the kind of athletes that we want to be, right? So kinesthesia is basically it's the sense of movement and the awareness of how your body moves in space. So it's not just the fact that your body is moving in space to do this one thing, the directive, but it's how it moves. That's what I was just talking about with the wingsuit.
Sure.
Right? So I'm trying to understand how it moves in time and space by doing all these things. So I'm able to create some silence in my head during the experience.
Sure.
So specifically the sensation of movement, not just position. And this is important because obviously everything that we do is moving.
Sure.
So it's basically like, you know how to close your eyes, you're turning around, you are then touching your nose and you're moving your leg out with your eyes closed. Upon the 360-degree rotation, you're turning to 360, and then you shoot your leg out about 45 degrees while your nose has also been touched by your finger at the exact same time. Your toes are now pointing to 45 degrees as an external rotation. So a lot of things are happening, but you know where 45 degrees is, you know how that feels in your body, you know what it feels like to press on your nose, and you're focusing on that. So this is a much more useful way of thinking about how we learn when it comes to skydiving and skydiving progression.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, cool. So the mind-body awareness aspect is like this third term that will lead us into the personal scorecard. And this is more holistic. And it basically encompasses the conscious awareness of both physical sensations, like proprioception and kinesthesia, right? And your mental state. It's often used in contexts like mindfulness, yoga, body awareness practices, right? Like all of these things of like, what are you feeling when you're experiencing all of this? And it involves being attuned to how your body feels and moves, as well as your mindset when it's engaged in those movements. So this is where it's incredibly important, because it's not just mental state does not mean just for performance. It doesn't mean for results. What it also means in our community is, what is the state of your mental health? What is the state of your emotional state, right? Your emotional well-being. What were you thinking when you left the house? What are you going through in your life? What's going on? Like, do you have financial pressures? Do you have relationship issues? Do you have, some other unknown variables that are giving you some kind of anxiety? What's your sleep like? What's your water intake like? What do you eat? Right? What goes into all of this that then puts you in a position, or how did you grow up that makes you think about and treat and interact with yourself, right? How do you treat yourself? Do you have a forceful approach, right? The grit, bear it, suck it up, buttercup, like that means, strength, you're weak otherwise, right? Because that's going to influence all of the kinesthetic inputs, whether you realize it or not.
Sure.
Right? Because if you are just feeling your body and you're like, that's just half of it. But then if you're like, I'm doing this and I'm going to put myself in this position, I'm going to use proprioception and kinesthesia, and I'm going to end up doing all these things. But why are you doing it now? Why are you doing it that way? And that's why I'm saying it involves like a lot of consistency, and you have to have a buy-in to do this work, because if you're at an exit point and you don't recognize how to do this already, like it's not a skill that you're integrating, you're gonna think it's way too much work. Way too much work to even do it. There's no real buy-in to do it just once, or to do it on, with someone else's directive, right? But when you start integrating it in your life, in your jumps, you automatically have built this very complex system that is like an additional instrument on your dash, that it tells you when you're low on fuel. It tells you what your ground speed is. It tells you what, and it's just this extra piece that allows for you to recognize, like, you know what? I'm holding so much tension, and this is actually what happened. I'm holding so much tension in my body. Let me see if I can exhale. I exhaled in the wingsuit, and this is when I started count. Before I counted, 3 seconds left and right, and I was like, "Holy shit, man, dude! I teach this stuff, and I still didn't even realize that I wasn't actually limber in my body. I had to put myself in a position to prompt myself to do that mental inventory, to do that body scan, to recognize that even if I was setting out to do the jump where it was a no pressure jump, it was like just feel your body and like see what happens and like make your micro adjustments with your mindset and all, like do all this stuff. Even if I was doing, like, I got on the load for that purpose, halfway through the jump, right? Like in this flight pattern, I'm holding so much tension because that's just what my initial go-to is,
Sure.
right? It's initially to be like, what if something happens, or I don't know if I'm going to do it right, or whatever I thought. But those cognitions, they happen so fast.
Sure.
Okay. But when you're proximity flying, like it's a small smidgen of and a lot of that can happen due to mechanical error. A lot of it can happen due to wind. I understand that. But what I'm trying to say is that, this is just having an extra, special superpower here that I can't guarantee is going to save us. I can't guarantee is going to prevent, because we don't live in an alternate universe to compare. But I guarantee you it's going to increase your chances of prevention of
Sure.
injury or fatality.
Sure.
Right?
Well,
Yeah.
having that ability to mentally check in with what your body's doing, because let's face it, they're two very separate things most of the time, especially for a more experienced skydiver. Your body is on autopilot, you think, and then you check in with it. And I've done the same thing. I'm incredibly tense and didn't realize it until I'm not tense anymore. I'd have to tell myself, okay, relax. Then I do it and go, oh shit, I was really bundled up right there. And it takes
Right.
practice to be able to learn to identify those times.
Right. Right. You simply don't realize.
Yeah.
And it's not because, you're dumb. It's not because you're not skilled enough. I mean, I genuinely think I'm a pretty okay skydiver. Like, I don't think I'm like, I'm not claiming to be the best of the best. Like, that's not what I'm saying, but I kind of think I'm good. Like, I'm
Sure.
okay. Right.
Sure.
Um, for anyone who's jumped with me, I hope I've never made someone feel unsafe. I don't think I actually maybe have that. And if I have, it was like one mistake and was probably a jump that I don't know, like have either never done before, or a jump that I've either never done before, or something that was going on, or, a place I've never been or whatever, but for the most part, it should be pretty predictable when it comes to me. But at
Sure.
the same time, this is the kind of stuff that can happen.
Sure.
So I want people to kind of hear, they probably heard this before, but it was a viral video from the Blue Angels. And this is kind of the work that I'm talking about because I know that conceptually it's really hard to understand what I'm talking about in real time. So I'm going to quickly get our listeners to hear this sound clip of a video that I'm sure the lot of us have heard. We've seen it circulate. It's the one of the Blue Angels. And it basically is this they're in this office, right? They're not out, they're not inside the aircraft, and they're displaying what chair flying looks like. And it it basically highlights what the usage of imagery, timing in terms of cadence, like you'll hear their voices and they will drag out certain words so that they keep the timing exactly as they need to, their brain needs to learn it. So what they're doing is that they are conditioning themselves through association, and those kinds of like mnemonics are the ways that you can get very close to doing half of the work, which is the kinesiology part of it, right? Once you get good at this, then you have space to have other thoughts. So
Sure.
what I want to like have everyone go home with today is you could be doing multiple things at the same time. You can have multiple tabs without feeling a sense of chaos or without feeling anxiety or without feeling overwhelmed by them. You can do multiple things at the same time and then leave feeling like, whoa,
Mm.
I'm pretty proud of myself. So I want you guys to hear this because what they're doing is they are all figuring out how long it takes while they're visualizing. They're closing their eyes. They're visualizing exactly what it looks like, what it should look like. And they are speaking out loud and dragging out their voice so that they can keep those metrics. And then from there, I'm pretty sure while they're in the aircraft, they have the bandwidth to have other thoughts and check in different areas that they otherwise wouldn't if they just did it in the aircraft or if they just use proprioception, right? So let me see if I can get this up going.
Smoke up foot. There's Pinko. Ripple. Bye bye. Easing more power. Ready, roll hat. Ease the pole. Rolling up the loop break. Up we go. Ripple. 4-5. Up we go. A mile and a half. Mark. Ground speed. 1 mile. Mark. Smoke up push. Go. Down the stinger. Right. Down. Back. Adding power.
So what do you think about that? I mean, you're a pilot.
I mean, we don't do nearly as much formation stuff like that. Obviously, they're next level. I would think that the closest interpretation of something like that I have is watching the 4 and 8-way teams mentally doing their dive in the back of the plane. I can picture God knows how many loads that I've been on where I was watching, groups like Airspeed or some of the best in the world, eyes closed, literally walking through the entire formation. Granted, they're just doing it on their own, but as a group as well when they're on the creepers, so you see it all the time in skydiving, just not quite as deep as the Blue Angels are having to do it.
Right, 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 right. And that, I'm glad that you said that because when I propose this as an option of the kind of training and the kind of support that you can get at Alta. This is only if you have a buy-in and it's only if that is what the goal is, right? But if you take a rendition of what you just heard and then you use what I just said, right? Which is just 3 seconds, look at Miami, 3 seconds, look at Orlando, and then just feel the difference between my left and my right big toe, right? That's not the same as me doing XRW, right? But at the same time, you can dilute it and you can get to the point where you're doing all of these, you can have these tabs that are open and still feel like, oh, this is a tool for me, right? So it's like the general population of skydivers, base jumpers, and people who do this is like there's obviously skill levels and like all sorts of different types of people, whether you're a hobbyist, or whether you just started competing, whether you're in the intermediate level, even if you're in the especially if you're in the expert level, right? I mean, this is for sure at its finest, at its
Sure.
most thorough level, world class. You can use what I'm talking about. It, like you said, it just gets more complex, but that doesn't mean that's the only way to do it. It just
Sure.
means that you take a little bit and then you kind
Sure.
of just apply it. And then I think it becomes easier over time,
Of
right?
course. Yeah.
To use it.
So now, how does all this tie into your the personal scorecard?
Yep. Cool. So let's talk about the biofeedback trifecta, right? It refers to a person's current state of mind. It encompasses their thoughts, their emotions, their perceptions, beliefs, their desires, and intentions at a given time. So essentially, the internal experience of a person, including both conscious and subconscious aspects. That's basically your what and your why. Why are you even doing this in the first place? I mean, I'm pretty sure that there has been some instructors who are like, what got you into skydiving, right? Or when you meet a person, like, how did you get here? How did you discover skydiving or whatever? Or usually that's a conversation you would have with a younger jumper, I guess, but like, or people don't really have that when they're seasoned. But your what and your why is a really important thing to ask. So your mental state is the first column, right, of this personal scorecard. The second is the process. So sports psychologists would be like, what is the process? How are you going to end up doing this, right? So I'm going to sit in the chair. I'm going to take the Blue Angels example. So I'm going to sit in the chair, both my feet are planted equally, the same way that I would do like a meditative or grounding breath work exercise. I'm sort of sitting upright, 90-degree position in my hips, okay? And then I'm going to close my eyes, and then I'm going to start my chair exercise, the imagery. Well, that's part of your process, the how you're going to do that, right? It's the way in which you have voluntary or involuntary systematic series of engineered or chemical operations, chemical being like neurochemical, that are performed to produce or eliminate something, right? So it's whatever you can think about that goes into the magic of skill, the metrics, that's your process. How are you going to do this, right? So you take your mental state plus your process, and those are your mental gear checks, right? So
Okay.
that's what Sports Illustrated covered in terms of what I was doing and what I
Nice.
do, right? Yeah. Now you have this third column, the key performance indicators, right? So those are your KPIs. And in business psychology or industrial organizational psychology, in on the trading floor, in sports psychology, all of these kinds of fields where you're gauging performance with measurable, like all your SMART goals, like your measurable goals, your metrics. Those are your stats. Those are your feel goods, right? Those are the things that like I got off that jump and I was like, dude, I didn't try to add, you know, anything. I didn't try to add a layout. I didn't try to do, 3 dive to flares. I didn't try to increase my altitude. Whoever from Squirrel is gonna think I'm an idiot, but like I'm joking, obviously, but I didn't try to increase my altitude on my Swift. Not that you can, but like, you know, I got off that jump and I did exactly what I wanted to do. I even left with some insight about the tension in my body. I exhaled, let that go, and I flew, let myself just fly. Did I feel good? That in and of itself was my KPI for that day, for that one run.
Sure.
Right? That's exactly what I wanted to show up and do. Also, it was a sunset jump, and that's perfect in terms of like the kind of KPIs I would go home for, right? Go home with. But it basically refers to a quantifiable measure that's used to evaluate the success of blank, right?
Gotcha.
The success of wingsuiting, the success of flying straight
Sure.
for beginners, the success of flying without potato chipping, right? And when we say the success of, you have to be very specific here because at the student level, yes, for sure. The success of landing and, being okay and dropping your stuff off and whatever. But when you're trying to think about what your quantifiable measures are, your KPIs for the success of something where you have a lot of skill and a lot of time, you got to be so, so specific with what you're trying to be successful with. And that's the work in that category. So you have this third column, right? Okay. Now you have this fourth column, fourth and final column, your results, right? When I work with athletes, I ask them, what are you here for? Right? Forget the general psychotherapy part of it where I work with the skydiving and base community. I'm talking about like sports psychology. They come in because they have either consecutive losing streaks, they have a mental block, or they want to be better just because they want to be better. They want to get to worlds, or they want to get to an international kind of level, or they want to break a record. And almost every athlete, and this is also for traditional sports like basketball, baseball, football, etc. Everyone cares about the results. They think about the scores. They think about like that singular outcome, the result, the singular result of if I do this, then I should be able to whatever. And what I want people now, if you've been listening so far, this is so important. I want people to think about how results driven they really are, right? Because if you're going to do something and in a window of time, you believe that that pixel of an entire picture is so critical in getting you an outcome, you are putting so much pressure in this one pixel and it's not efficient. Forget the fact if it's like dangerous as well. Forget the fact that it is, I don't know. I mean, it's exciting because you have a lot of like adrenaline, you have a lot of pressure. So you're like, I have to do this. Like, this is what I have to do, whatever. Or F it, I'm going to try to be gentle with myself and I'm still going to go do this jump, but I shouldn't. But then you're still thinking about, well, I know I shouldn't necessarily do the jump I wanted to do, but I'm going to do this other, more less intense jump because of the end result, then you are absolutely working inefficiently, right? Because what's happening is that what gets weighted is the person's worth in this one pixel of an entire picture.
Sure.
And you're missing an opportunity of listening to all of the things within your process, and you're blurring your boundaries in your process, and your mental state is compromised. So here, and you do not have control of the results. You don't even have control of your key performance indicators, to be honest with you. Right? So if you think about it from like an X and Y axis, and this is what I showed at PIA, like you think about what you have control over versus what you don't. Like you have control over your mental state. You have control over the process. You have limited control of the key KPIs, but you still have some control of the KPIs. You have jack shit control of your results.
Sure.
And that has to do with, and some people think about results as sponsorships, accolades, getting a job, getting on a badass project, being known for something, maintaining a title. That's the entirety of like every single drop of sweat, blood, and tears that you've put in will get you those results. Like that's so irrelevant to this exact moment. And if you just fixed this moment and homed in on it, then you obviously would have better and better runs and better situations.
Sure.
In all of the rest of the pixels, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a cumulative effect.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Awesome.
And so, yeah, I mean, and that's the personal scorecard. It's a series of 4 columns. And like, man, we waited this long to get to the point where she talks about like 4 different words. Listen, I wish I can share can I share my screen? I wanted to share my screen and show you what I did at PA, which is really interesting. I showed, let's run an experiment real quick before we finish. Dean.
Yeah.
What are your mental gear checks when you jump? And how would you teach MGCs to a skydiver, a brand new skydiving student?
Uh, it's been a long time since I've like actively run through mental gear checks, but for me, it was the freak out factor when I was learning. Um, I came up in skydiving in a very macho time in the sport, so feelings were not something that you talked about. Being scared
Mm-hmm.
was not something that you talked about. But I really had to examine that. In our last conversation, I told you about having my turnaround point on the highway. That was specifically so that if mentally I was not in the game, I had an easy out. I could just step back from the day and reset. So that was kind of my mental gear check. Is if I drove past that, then I deemed myself fit to go out and make this skydive. And it worked. I mean, it was, even though it was a very surface level check in, I always checked in with myself and always tried to ensure that when I walked on the drop zone, I wasn't carrying the day's baggage along with my equipment because I knew the day's baggage could get me killed. So that was a big thing for
Mm-hmm.
me was, am I in a headspace to go out and jump out of an airplane? So it was pretty
Mm-hmm.
basic for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this is what always, and it's hard because we're just chatting with each other, and I wish I wanted to share my screen actually, but it's logistically it's hard right now.
sure.
When I did this at PIA, I asked the same exact thing, and I mean, look, for what it's worth, I mean, you still mentioned some important pieces, right? I mean, you still need to know what your process is in terms of like what you need to do. You have to be focused. And of course, you have to be focused. Now, if you were to break down, I have to be focused, I have to use my judgment, and I have to be able to think about what are my directives, basically. Everything else gets mitigated.
Mm,
Put that shit aside and focus on what you got to focus on. Yes, yes. But what you have to what shit you're putting aside and what you actually have to focus on is not just the directive of performing in the sport, right? So, yes, you gotta fucking focus, but maybe you're focusing on something that I mean, clients who work with me, and if they are listening, they'll know what I'm talking about. It's you don't turn on yourself. And what that actually means is that you don't turn your back on telling the whole story. You
mm,
don't turn your back on, and this is part of like the mental state, the biofeedback trifecta. This is one tool of I will count in just a moment so that the people get a sense of it. Um, Not turning on yourself is not turning your back on like telling yourself every single thing that goes into why things are the way that they are in a very quick way. I mean, you're not sitting there like, on a 5 minute call being like, okay, well, but you're doing it very quickly in your mind. You're just taking a big body scan, you're taking a big life scan, and
mm,
you're just knowing the shit that you're carrying and you're accounting for it. It doesn't mean you have to do anything with it in the moment, right? You're not going to sit there and try to figure out how your divorce is going to finalize on a 2 minute call,
mm.
right? But what it means is that you know that you got shit going on and you have to factor that into your mental state. Yeah.
Sure.
So I'm going to go ahead and count a little bit of some of the tools here because I'm looking at the personal scorecard. And if you have been following so far, I encourage you to pause. I mean, if you're driving, don't do it. But if you're just listening, do it. So you should by now have um, put your mental state, your process, your key performance indicators, your main results, all of that in 4 columns. And you should be able to have guessed your way through what you think your MGCs are going to be, right? But I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Oh man, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. It goes on. There's about 30 different options here for what you can include in your biofeedback trifecta. That's just one column.
Mm,
So that doesn't mean that everybody is going to do this in 2 seconds. It doesn't mean that everybody's going to, like, the 2 minute call. It doesn't mean that every single tool applies or every point of focus applies to every person. It means that there is a huge toolbox and that individually, what we do is that we look in this toolbox, right? I have a client on intake, and then we pick and we tailor exactly what the biofeedback trifecta would look like. I help a person build that. And then the processes, which are, I think, there's about like 40 or 50. And then also really depends because you could depending on the skills that you're trying to acquire or the actual discipline or the sport that you're in. I mean, it's going to be very different, right? But you fill this thing out, and I'm looking at it, it looks like you're hoarding all of this information, but I'm the one who helps you break it down. I'm the record keeper, and
Sure.
we kind of share this personal scorecard together. The KPIs, the main results, all of that we put into question, we interrogate it. And really what you're left with is, I mean, things that then just feel like thoughts.
Sure.
It's just like having another thought because you just top of mind. And then when you're doing that, then you can incorporate that into your fly site data, where you having, and it becomes part of your process. And then hopefully part of your KPIs if you can manipulate the process to change it, to reframe it.
Sure.
So you see about that fine tuning ability that you can have. You can do that with students, you can do that with elite competitors or whoever.
Nice. Well, I mean, it's just an easier way to get a grip on exactly what you're doing instead of winging it, so to speak, which is exactly what I and a lot of my generation did. You're just kind of winging it. Like for me personally, the first time I ever took a break from skydiving, it was when I found myself in free fall, pissed off about something that had happened on the ground. And I went, oh, I'm not here, and that's not a good thing. And that was the first time I stepped back from the sport for a little while, going, you know, something, maybe I need a little bit of a reset. If the real world is creeping in to my 60 seconds of free fall, something's not quite right.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Exactly. Before we go, I want to give a massive shout out. We should have done this earlier, but I am not letting this conversation finish without giving a huge shout out to the Canopy Formation record of 2025.
Awesome.
They aimed to surpass the legendary 100 way that was formed in 2007. Dude, that is 18 years. As of right now, I think they got like 104. They have 104 canopies. They formed this massive diamond in the sky. Yeah, and that standing record was just broken. I think we're all following it. If not, our feeds are flooded with the beautiful photos.
Oh yeah.
But I would rather be on a wingsuit. Not look gnarly.
The canopy formation stuff always freaked me out. CRW, hats off to them. They've got balls 10 times bigger than mine, male, female, and everything. Man, holy shit, they're badasses. And fuck that. My hat is off to them. It's stunningly beautiful. The one that I saw was Norman Kent shooting video of it, and absolutely spectacular, as you would expect from Norman and from the formation. So yes, hats off and congratulations. That's pretty amazing.
Right. I'm gonna give a big shout out to Norman, who's a friend of mine as well. I think, we both are just enamored with his art.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, hopefully Bob will hear this and will remember that I would love to fly with Pyro one day, and he can help me with that. Streamers to start, but yeah, these guys they're amazing.
Absolutely. Now, before I let you go, let's tell everybody what we're going to be talking about next time around.
Yeah, so you know what? Today, I think, Dean, you put it best. What did you say? You said, that Alta Therapy basically covers the whole gamut of skydivers, right? From students all the way up into lifelong members of the community that they've either made it a job, a purpose in their life. They are competing at world-class levels. Like it's every single thing that can possibly happen in skydiving. And so we have these 4 programs, right? But before we get into the nitty-gritty, before we get into, the granular, really fun and meatier parts of, every different program, or even the personal scorecard, what I want to do is next time have listeners tune in on the way, the intersection of mental health and how that actually looks in skydiving and in base. Right. I'm going to tailor some of these experiences to normative presentations, things that we kind of see in the sport, and how to detect if somebody has something going on that maybe they can either, approach their friends, their loved ones, or even take a check within themselves. Because I think it's a good place to set the foundation for, all right, we have this personal scorecard, we have this mental state, this biofeedback trifecta. we have the process. We understand that something, we got to put some words there. And we have this other third thing with the KPIs. We don't care about results. But when we're talking about your mental state, we're also talking about your mental health. And I think it's a good way to sort of like set the stage for all the different um
So with the next one, we'll kind of do broad strokes of the four different programs that we're talking about, and the episodes that are going to further on are going to dive into the nitty gritty, so to speak, of each one of them.
that's right.
Perfect. Perfect. I'm looking forward to it. I know that, and maybe this is just a skydiver thing, but I'm very interested when we get around to it to talking about the work that you do in regard to critical injury and stuff. That's something that I know I have questions, but I also know that I want all the other information that leads up to that before we get there, because I know that by the time you've reached critical injury, we've probably already blown past some of the stuff that we will talk about in the upcoming episodes. So I'm really looking forward to all of them for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And I want to highlight that my passion project is the critical injury program. It is whether it's any kind of injury that leads to a lifelong story of fighting your way through chronic pain, or through the transitions that you have to make in life, and sort of reconceptualizing what life is, for people who have been critically or catastrophically injured. It's the reason why I wanted to create some kind of avenue to collect more funds, because a lot of these people are out of my jurisdiction where they can't use their insurance because Alta Therapy does take insurance. They can't pay out of pocket, and these are the people that really, they honestly need immediate crisis intervention, crisis support.
Sure.
So I'm very passionate and determined to try to raise funds however we can, and to get the word out that Alta Therapy does this work, and then maybe feature some people who have been through it, and feature some people who work with this population as well. So whoever's listening, if you are injured, if you have been, if you live with chronic pain, if you live with, in a different body than you have, that you had before your accident, it's just one of those things where I want you to know that not only are you not alone, but there's a lot of normative experiences that we don't talk about because we don't know what to talk about.
Sure. No,
And I just want,
no, I absolutely get that, and I can understand what a difficult position that's got to be in. And again, my experience is not with any one critical injury; it's a culmination of way too many. But I think the end result sometimes is similar, which is why I'm super interested in hearing how you do that, because I know for myself, dealing with chronic pain and all that kind of stuff can be quite a battle, and I know so many of my friends in the sport deal with it as well, and they
Mhm.
don't they separate the physical from the mental, and they shouldn't, because dealing with that physical pain is a real mental trial, and I've seen it absolutely shred people, and I've had to fight it doing that to me. So it's something I'm super interested to dive into.
I likewise with you. I would love to have you, you know, also maybe even share some of the things. So these are the things that, you guys listening out there, please stay tuned, and do share this podcast, share this series with other people that you think can benefit. We did take a more serious approach, a more professional approach, and it is for good reason. The Lunatic Fringe podcast does a great job of like interviewing some of the best, most interesting people that are doing really badass shit out there. Um, and this is just a place where you can get information and learn, and also have thought-provoking conversations with not just your friends, but also with us. Feel free to message me. I'll give my contact info first, maybe, and
Please.
then we can kind of let people know how to get in contact with you from, on
Sure. Yeah, please,
whatever mode
please.
you're interested. Yeah, so if you're interested in getting in contact with me directly, you could email me at chloe@altatherapy.org. Just remember it's not .com, it's .org. And you can also visit the website, altatherapy.org, and, just book a consultation if you actually really think that you're ready to begin, the work. But if you have any questions or comments, anything you want to add, anything you want to integrate, like we're definitely incorporating all of our listeners. So please even just DM me on Facebook, Alta Therapy. I think it's Alta. I did this last time. I don't even remember because I'm a freaking dinosaur. And I need a personal assistant for this shit 'cause I don't know. It's what is it? I think it's just Alta Therapy. Is that what it is? Yeah, Alta Therapy, period. Yeah, cool. It's literally Alta Therapy, one word, ALTA therapy, and you can DM me there. For sure I'll get those and we can incorporate whatever you think you're interested in or whatever questions you have.
Awesome. And you can pass on all that stuff to me as well, the Lunatic Fringe podcast, on pretty much everything, including the website. But Chloe, as always, a pleasure talking to you, and I'm really looking forward to digging deeper into all of this.
Likewise. All right, Dean, chat soon.
Take care. Well, there you have it. Another episode of the Lunatic Fringe podcast, brought to you as always by, well, wait, not as always, actually. Brought to you now by Gyro. Formerly known as NZ Aerosports, you'll head to gyro.com for their next level line of canopies. By Pussfoot, the extreme sports collective. Head over to pussfoot.com to check it out. By Summit Parachute Systems, check out summitparachutesystems.com to talk to Jarrett Martin and the gang about kick-ass pilot rigs, rigging courses, and more. By Flyaway Indoor Skydiving, go to flyawaytn.com and check out all the cutting-edge stuff to come. By Pure Spectrum CBD, head to purespectrumcbd.com to check out their wide range of CBD products. And as for us, head to the lunaticfringepodcast.com to listen to any of the hundreds of episodes currently available, hit the link for our YouTube channel, pick up your copy of the Lunatic Fringe book or The Accidental Stripper, and get a sneak peek at upcoming guests. Once again, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.